Welcome everyone to another edition in our Softcrylic webinar series. My name is Sammy Anderson. I'm our marketing coordinator here. Today's focus is on migrating to the new mobile SDK AEP with Adobe. Our Director of Digital Analytics, John Paul Burns, will be moderating our conversation between two of our talented digital analytics consultants, Ray and Rajdeep. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A or throw them in the chat. Make sure you answer the poll that is launched as well. And if you have any further questions, always reach out to us at events@softcrylic.com. Have a great time. Here you go, JP.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Sammy. So yes, welcome everybody. Before we get started, yes, definitely we have a poll that's live. As you roll in, go ahead and answer it. It'll be interesting for us then. I also want to remind you all about this T-shirt, Best Friends for EVAR. So for the people who participate with questions, the first 5 people who submit questions, we'll connect with you guys after the webinar, and we will, coordinate to get you one of these T-shirts. Sammy will reach out and, give you ask you your address and your size. So keep those questions coming in, because we like those. Okay, so with all that said, I want to start with Ray, really, and why are we here? What's the purpose of this webinar?
Yeah, good question. So we are here because Adobe's announced their end of support for their version 4 of their mobile SDKs for the Experience Cloud. So what that means is on August 31st of 2021, so there is some time, they will no longer be supporting version 4. So that means no more, if you reach out to client care in September of 2021, they won't be allowed to answer any of your questions. Their consultants or any other person you might talk with at the company, won't be able to support it. In addition to that, in September, so probably a few weeks later of 2021, there's going to be no new fixes, no new OS related updates. So that really hits hard, especially in mobile where things are changing. So, we wanted to talk a little bit about what that migration process looks like, as well as, what to get excited about. So what they're replacing it with is AEP. So it's tempted to think of it as version 5, but it's actually such a rework from the ground up that it's kind of they're even starting the SDK versioning over again. So their AEP version 1.x, depending on which one you're looking at what time.
So some people might be referencing this as the version 5, but it's really the AEP SDK.
Yeah, and that's short for the Adobe Experience Platform SDK. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a whole new architecture and a whole new way of doing things. So yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about migrating and some of the new features.
All right. So what are the differences and why is it better?
So the biggest change when you first get your hands on this you'll notice that it uses launch, and that's kind of all new. So before, with version 4x, you used mobile services, which first release was kind of cutting edge, but it's been you can tell they've pulled resources and spent a lot of time working on AEP. So that got has some of the nice features, but it's not slick. Doesn't do everything launch can do. So with the AEP, you can manage your JSON configuration file. You no longer have to do that by hand, which is huge, especially if you've ever been stuck in a place where you need to make a small configuration change and you've realized the next day that the app release already went live and you have to wait until the next app release. which is oftentimes, depending on your organization, a slow release cycle and might be a month or two out. So by using launch, the way it does is whenever the app has a clean launch, so not when you pull it up from the background, but whenever you've launched after an amount of time of inactivity, it will reach out to the launch servers and actually pull down configuration file again. And so you're able to basically publish changes very similarly to how you would do it on the web.
Okay.
Which is super exciting, yeah.
A lot more agile.
A lot more agile, yeah. They've really sort of taken a hard look, I think, at some of the underlying technical architecture as well. So it's just a lot more like modern, forward-thinking, out-of-the-box support for Gradle and CocoaPod. So if you're an app developer that uses that, they're like a package management tool that allows you to basically super easily keep everything up to date, keep all your SDKs kind of managed in one place. It makes install a lot easier. So some great work there.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll get into it a little bit later, but they're also starting to add more and more support for data elements and rules. So I'm always a little hesitant to say to get people too excited about that, because you still need the app developer to get in there, get hands-on, really do a lot of the work. But there is some really cool stuff you can do with it, and you can pull some of the work off their plates, and especially if you do a lot of pixels and things like that on the mobile app, on your mobile app, you can use some of these launch rules to really kind of streamline it and take some weight off your developers.
Okay. Okay. So it's not the myth of we're gonna replace developers with launch, but definitely extends your capability as a analytics administrator of that app to give you a little bit more leeway to do things. But you certainly still need to partner with your dev team.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. And for like, especially like some of these configuration changes, let's say you want to, for analytics, update a report suite, remove a report suite. Let's say it's going to the wrong one, or the traffic is a lot higher than you're expecting. You can make some of those changes just kind of on the fly really easily. I've worked with a lot of folks over the years where we've had to kind of beg and plead the dev teams to, because, maybe it was, out of your hands, or there was some miscommunication, and they published the app with, let's say, offline tracking enabled, but you weren't configured for that. So now your new Shiny app has gone live, and you're getting zero data collection, or, the report suite had just a typo. Those sort of things do happen, and it gives you more. And as well, I'll hold off on some of the other goodies, but it is launch, so you can use extensions and things like that, and they're not quite as on the fly and nimble maybe as the web version, but
okay. So
cool.
You get me excited, right?
Yeah.
Excited. So how do we start? How do we start with AEP SDK, Raj?
Yeah. Okay, so this has been a frequently asked question, and a lot of people want to know actually how is it different than the version 4, or is it hard or is it easy? So in order to just share this, I have prepared a deck. I'm going to share my screen and show you. Just give me a moment. All right, so basically, it's taking some time. So meanwhile, I would say I have divided this entire process in 4 steps. So just give me a second. I'm having some trouble in sharing my screen. Anyway, so basically I have divided this entire process in 4 basic steps. So all you need to do just follow the 4 basic steps. The step 1 is to do some configuration in launch. And the step 2 is to do some configuration in your mobile app. When I'm saying mobile app, it means in your application code, okay? And the third step is to call the APIs, to call the Lifecycle APIs and data track APIs. And the fourth step is the legacy one, in which you need to map your analytics variables with the context data. Okay, so the first step is pretty simple. All you need to do is just create a property in launch, but now launch gives you a feature to create a mobile property. So just make sure when you're creating a property, just choose a mobile platform when you creating a property. Okay, so and the next step is to add the extension. It's similar to the way we do for a web property, but make sure when you're adding the extension, use the correct Adobe Analytics extension, because when you will search for it, you'll see a similar extension which says Adobe Analytics Mobile Services. So I would say for basic setup, avoid that, because that extension is generally for the advanced features like in-app messaging and push notifications. So just use a legacy one, the Adobe Analytics extension, and then you need to just add some details like report suite ID and tracking server information and things like that. And then all you need to do is just create a build and push all those changes. I mean, your default extensions and the Adobe Analytics extension in the build, and then just push that build into the correct environment. And I mean, till now, the entire process is similar to the way you do in a website, the way you do it for your website, right? And now once that's done, what you need to do is you need to now configure your mobile SDK on your application. So in order to do that, what you need to do, you need to just grab the way you do it in a website, you need to grab the headers, right? Similarly, here we call them the initialization code and the dependencies. So what you need to do, you need to add those dependencies in your app. Once that's done, so by default, your application will be able to pull all those SDKs required for your app in order to trigger the analytics and all other extensions you have. So all those extensions will get imported automatically once you put those dependencies through build Gradle in Android and through Koga ports in iOS. So once that's done, the next step is to incorporate all the initialization code. When I'm saying initialization code, you need to just register the extension in the app, and you need to just enable the you need to set the application, and you need to call some APIs in order to just initiate your mobile app. And all these configuration has to be done inside your main class. When I'm saying main class, the main class is one that triggers when your mobile app starts. So that should be the first app. That should be the first class to be triggered when your app is launching. Okay, so that's done. Now the third step, which I call APIs. So when I'm saying APIs, these are just functions that you need to invoke based on the data you are tracking. So there are basically 2 sort of APIs we have. One is called Lifecycle APIs, another called Analytics APIs. So in Lifecycle APIs, you basically track all the lifecycle related data to a mobile app. When I'm saying lifecycle, it means things like upgrades, first launches, install, things like that. And when it comes to analytics APIs, you need to call track state, track action. So basically, track state is nothing but it's as equivalent to a page load in your DOM website, and track action is nothing but a user interaction. So you need to just invoke those APIs. Yeah.
One question: is that similar to how it is today?
Yes, it is exactly similar. The API is still similar. All you need to just make sure that you are calling the right class. So I think the class name has changed. I don't know what it used to be, but now it is called Mobile Core. Okay. So you need to just invoke the functions within the right class. And but yeah, the rest of the process is same. You still need to use the context data, and you need to set the page name and the interaction related data in context data itself.
Sorry, Rush, can you try resharing your screen again? Let's see if that's working. Yeah, for the developers, it should hopefully be just a kind of find and replace all for the track state track action updates.
Yeah, so Raj, maybe can you try sending me the PowerPoint and then I will try sharing?
Yeah, yeah. Just give me a moment.
And so in the meantime, Lifecycle API, those also existed back in 4.x. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So these APIs, I mean, they haven't changed a lot. It's just because of the launch, the way we import and put the dependencies, and you know, our the way we build the changes and everything. So that has changed. But your life cycle and your data track APIs are still same.
Okay. So it sounds like a lot of the nuances are in changes of actual function names or class names.
Yeah, yeah. So they have, I mean, restructured the entire classes and everything. So just you need to make sure you're using the right class names and you're invoking the right function.
Okay, cool.
So I
Yeah,
think the way you have the way you have core in your web launch, similarly you have something called mobile core, and that comes with all these you know, basic functions and the APIs that you need in order to fire analytics related data.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So sounds like or it seems like you're still having problems with the PowerPoint. So
Yeah.
keep.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
have that.
So yeah. So once that done, so basically once that done, you need to make sure that you calling the lifecycle API properly. In order to call the lifecycle API, you need to, you know, still use those functions which used to call lifecycle start, lifecycle pause, and you need to invoke them correctly. So I've seen many people not using lifecycle pause if they don't. I mean, if you won't use it, you may have a, you know, problem in reporting the crashes properly. So I would say it's better that you call lifecycle start and lifecycle pause properly, and it is also recommended to have these two APIs called within every class, not just in the first one or in the main class. Okay, moving on to the analytics APIs. As I mentioned, like you still have to rely on the track state and track action. So track state is primarily for tracking the state related data, for example, page name and anything which is happening on page, maybe site section or etc. Right? While track action, as the name says, it is basically to track the user interactions, maybe like a button click or maybe, you know, or maybe a scroll or anything. But again, the structure has been same. It hasn't changed. You still have to leverage the context data and you know, put that context data in these APIs and then send to Adobe Analytics Server.
Raj, one thing
Yeah.
here. So I have the blog post that you're about to publish.
Yeah.
You know, because a lot of this is very technical. You know, I think it's good to have a visual representation.
Right.
So I can share that blog post so people in this webinar, they get almost like a preview of the upcoming blog post, and then you can guide us through there.
Sure.
All right. So let's give this a try. Boom. There.
Yeah. So this is exactly what I was talking about. Thanks for sharing, JP. So yeah, I mean, if you look at the lifecycle APIs that I'm calling, so would you scroll a bit? Yeah. So you need to invoke these lifecycle start API inside your on resume function. So I mean, just FYI, I have, I mean, these screenshots are based on the Android app. So you have to, you know, call the similar APIs in the correct function as corresponding to your iOS app. So in Android, you need to just invoke this lifecycle start within on resume and lifecycle pause inside on post function. And it is recommended to call these, you know, this pair in each class.
Okay.
JP, would you scroll down?
And then these are the track state. You have the track action. And here we have the last step is to map the context variables.
Yes, yes. So the last step is still same, because here you're not tagging you're not tagging directly data into the EVARs and props and other analytics variables. What you're doing here is you're putting data in a generic variables called context data, and then you're sending those data to analytics server, right? By the time those variables are at analytics server, analytics doesn't recognize those. So in order to map those context data into the correct EVARs and props, you need to use the processing rules. So in SDK4, you had an option to use mobile services to map these data or the processing rules. But in SDK5, it's much easier because you need not to worry about mobile services anymore. You don't have to do anything in mobile services anymore. All you need to just do configurations and launch, and then do some configurations in your app, call the correct APIs, and then as a last step, you need to just map those data using the processing rules. So as soon as your app starts sending data, these context data to analytics server, your processing rules will start showing all those context variables in the dropdown. And then what you need to do is you just need to put the right context data against the right EVAR prop.
All right.
Yeah. So JP, would you scroll a bit? I have a screenshot for the reference of the audience.
Scroll down or up?
Yeah, down.
I'm not seeing the right thing. So this is a screenshot.
Yeah, this one.
Okay.
So if you will zoom a bit, everyone would be able to see the context data on the left-hand side in the app. The name of the context data is app.pagename and app.site section, while the bus home page and home are the values. So once you have these context data in your APIs, and then your app is able to send those context data to analytics server, the moment it happens, you'll start seeing those context data in your processing rules dropdown. So then what you have to do is just create the processing rules and set those variables against the correct analytics variable. In our case, page name, channel, and I have used a custom EVAR as well. So this is, I would say the last 2 steps of my primer guide haven't changed a bit. It's just the first 2 steps you need to be wary of when it comes to SDK 5.
Awesome. So that's it.
Yeah, that's it. For someone who is pretty new, I think these 4 steps are enough to send data to analytics, and then after that you will be able to see these data in your reports, and then you can also pull lifecycle reports to pull data related to lifecycle of an app, and you can also pull the custom reports like EVARs and prop to grab to get more insights about the custom data that you're tracking around your app.
Nice.
Yeah.
What about tracking web views? Do we need to worry about that? Is it any differently in the ADB SDK?
Yeah, so it has, I wouldn't say it has changed a lot, but yeah, there has been a few differences. So I would say for the legacy frameworks like Android and iOS, you still need to do the same way. You need to create a web property, and you need to create a mobile property for your app, for your native content, and you need to have a web property for your a hybrid content, or I would say a web content inside your app. And then you need to maintain those properties in parallel. And then again, we have those functions like append visitor ID when you're switching from from app to web and vice versa. So you need to invoke those functions in order to ensure the continuity of a visit across the 2 different frameworks when somebody is switching from web to app or vice versa. But when it comes to the new frameworks like Cordova, Flutter, and there are many other React Native. There are so many new frameworks which are in place which offers you a functionality where you can run your web view inside app using the using the app framework itself. You don't have to develop your DOM pages separately. So in that case, you can just rely on the web property itself, and you don't have to worry about creating a separate tagging for your web pages.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that's something new with AEP 5, AEP SDK 5, and that's where Adobe is really going. And I think that's the future.
Nice. So speaking of future, is migrating to AEP all bad news in terms of a lot of extra work, or do we get some good things out of this? Ray.
Yeah, you definitely get some new goodies. So I was starting to talk about that a little bit, you know, with launch and what you can do. So yeah, let me just kind of piggyback on what Raj was talking about. I don't know if I'm asking for trouble here, but let me show you something that I put together. Let me.
Oh, live demos.
Live demo, yeah. So I wanted to put together a little something that showed how you might be able to piggyback on like what Raj was talking about. So let's say you know, your app is already live. Some, you know, a marketer comes to you and they're like, we would love to get a pixel firing on the order confirmation page. And also, just to make this complicated, we only want it to fire for users that only like recently started using the app. So, you know, previously, one way you could have done that is ask the developer to install the vendor's SDK, which would perhaps just send a simple pixel call, or maybe they would have to do it by hand, and determine the logic of, you know, when the app was first launched. So we can actually do that through the new rule system without actually even needing an app release. So you can piggyback on all the mobile core stuff that's happening. So just like on the web, you can use a trigger here to launch it for specific events. So in this case, we're saying when the state equals order confirmation. This is kind of dummy data, but you could imagine what this might look like. So you could listen for a track action or a track state call, check the name of the state. You could also check other context data that's being sent along with it. So you can get really pretty granular, and it's the event portion is actually quite strong. And so this is why it's so important to work with your developer and make sure that the track state, track action, and all your kind of analytics related data really comes through and looks good and is solid, because not only will that give you great analytics data, it then gives you more flexibility in the launch system. So yeah, so we could say, okay, let's trigger that on the order confirmation page. And then this is kind of a funny condition, but I thought it was kind of neat. You know, let's you could you know, restrict it just like on the web. And in this case, I'm going to say the install date was after September 1st, 2020. So you could do after, you can do before. There's tons of other different condition types. You could kind of go through these and see what would fit for you.
Some default with the extension.
So these are just kind of like in the web. They're all tied to the extension. Yeah. So this is the mobile core extension, which means, yeah, they're basically out of the box. These are all the out of the box ones. Any other extension could implement their own conditions. So you know, right now there's only a few extensions, but in theory you can write your own. That's another new exciting feature. If you're working with a more advanced, like a vendor that needs more than just say a simple pixel call, it's not inconceivable in the future that vendor might write an extension so that you don't have to implement a separate SDK. Their SDK can kind of, in a sense, you can think of an extension as an SDK a little bit, like a little module. Could live inside your launch Adobe ecosystem, which you know, could you know, you could imagine, I don't know, maybe like a double clicky thing or something like that happening here. So yeah, so you can, just like in launch, just like on the web, you can have multiple conditions and all this kind of fun stuff. You can do ORs on the event. And then the actions you can take on it, this is where it's a lot more limited, say, than the web, but you can still do some really neat stuff. In this case, I'm sending a post back, which will just basically ping this server and send any data along with it. And so, I did like vendor.com, order confirmation, some kind of dummy URL, and then you see this. This is the syntax for dynamic data. So before I had created a data element called order ID. And this actually lets you piggyback on the context data that you already set up for analytics. So again, this is just another plug for get your analytics right. But here's the context data key, and this is kind of should only be accessible, I believe, if you're listening to an event that has this past. So this won't say persist, I don't believe. But it should be available if you're, say, listening to the order confirmation state call, and that state call has this context data. But there's lots of options here for data elements. So just kind of they really wanted it to feel like how it works on the web, and some of this is really standard stuff that you might already be getting, but maybe you want to send it to another vendor. Maybe it's not reporting, it's not in the reports the way you want. So you could actually create a data element, send a tracking call and pass it in a different way, maybe than the life cycle is. Yeah, so there's all sorts of neat stuff here that you can use, and is dynamic, so that when you are putting together a rule like this will of course be replaced with whatever the data element evaluates to. So this is kind of just a dabbling of the rule system, which I suspect they're just going to keep improving on. And then what's neat is you would save that, and it would just in your library you would go and publish it, and then if it's published, the next time a user uses the app, it'll reach out to the launch server and pull down the new rule set. So yeah, you can do all that without needing to have an app release. So
okay, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, here you're using Launch as a tag management system for your mobile app.
Yeah, it's a little bit restricted, but it's there. Yeah. And it's the best one I've seen so far from a vendor. Yeah.
Only possible through AEP, not through 4.x or anything like that.
Correct. Yep. This is one of those ones. It's worth upgrading if, especially for many reasons. But it's not just going to be a slog to the new version just for the sake of it. You're going to get some cool new features. So. In addition to that, there's some, you should get some technical enhancements. It should be slightly faster.
Okay.
As well as they've upgraded some of their some of the SDKs. So they've been kind of touting the Places service, which is something that you could do before with mobile services, but the new version I think improves upon that, and that's things like points of interest, geofencing. I believe they've expanded some of their some of the SDK capabilities outside of, say, analytics. So we've been talking a lot about analytics in the core, but Adobe Campaign, Target, Audience Manager. They all have their separate extensions, aka like little mini SDKs that fit into this ecosystem, and you can share data elements across tools. And so you're really sort of seeing where they're heading with more cross-tool compatibility, like you've been able to do on the web now is coming more to the app. some of those SDKs just have new features that weren't available, and I'll put a link to the compatibility chart in the chat in a minute. But most of the analytics features are carried over, with I think maybe one or two exceptions. Something to watch out for if you're super jazzed on this like I am is Swift is not quite ready yet. So if your app is built in Swift and that's a deal breaker, you might want to wait. They'll definitely have it, and probably relatively soon, but I think it's still in developer beta. So you might be able to get a beta version if you reach out to Adobe, but Swift is still in progress.
Okay, yeah, those are very important things to take into account as you migrate, right? Compatibility of features and, you know, what you're currently building it on. Does it support it? I mean, I would think that's a pretty important one.
Yeah. When it first launched, there was a lot more deal breakers. Now there's like a couple things, I think, like timed actions. I think it was a kind of a specialty feature that I don't think a lot of people used. I think either it's not over yet, or they decided they're not going to carry it over. So there's a couple minor ones like that, but all the big stuff's there.
All right, cool. I mean, you gave us some good goodies, Ray.
I think Raj maybe has one more for us.
Raj, what do you got?
Yeah, so one thing I think, Ray, you might have missed is the attached data thing, which is my favorite when it comes to the feature launch, use launch as a more of a TMS. So the thing is, so for many times that it happens is, what happens is basically you might have missed so many data points, and you might have missed asking your developers to put a certain data point or a context data in your app. So what you can do, you can also define that additional context data in your launch itself, and then you can add that data point to the context data which have been defined from the app code itself. So it means you don't have to completely rely on the developers to pass on the values. You can also attach or append the additional data from the launch itself. So for that, there's you need to, again, rely on the mobile core extension, and then within the action, you'll see an action called attach data. So it has a pretty strict format, and you need to just stick to it. And then again, you can leverage data elements and other things to supply a dynamic value like ECID or maybe a app ID or something like that. And then you can add all those details to launch itself. Again, no dependency of developers. But I would say as of now, this feature is still kind of not in kind of restricted. You can just add the data. You cannot remove, you cannot modify, you cannot delete anything from the app. But you can just add on something to what your app is sending through launch.
Yeah.
So I think in the future it might get it might get honed more, and maybe in future we might be able to add, delete, as well as modify things.
Yeah, that's a good call out. You can also if you have like an event you can attach to that you don't have any tracking on, you can also trigger track state and track action calls.
Right.
So you can add calls that were not there before. And then one of the other really cool features is Project Griffon, which I think kind of revolutionized testing. And Raj, you've been playing around with it a lot, right?
Yeah.
Who likes debugging mobile extensions, mobile apps right now? Nobody. Well, let's see how it goes with Project Griffon. So Raj, go for it.
Yeah. So I mean, there used to be a product called Bloodhound, like back in 2014 or 15, but that wasn't good, and that was again for the app testing itself. But I would say lately, if Adobe has developed a tool which is really I would say perfect, I would just call it Project Griffon. So this tool is solely for app testing, and it's just not for where you can just see the beacons getting sent out of your mobile app. It provides you end-to-end debugging. When I'm saying end-to-end debugging, you can also debug how many what all processing rules are running, and then what those processing rules are setting values and what URs and props. So it's like complete end-to-end solution from your app till the time your data reaches analytics, and even after your processing rules, the calculation of that, and then what all EVARs and props and events are getting triggered. So it's like end-to-end debugging And again, for websites, we had tons of extensions, and you have pretty niche dev tools through which you can debug a lot of things. But in mobile apps, it has always been a big pain. And I would say this Project Griffon is really an amazing thing through which you can pretty easily debug your app. And as I was saying it again, it provides you end-to-end debugging, and it's pretty strong. And it's pretty easy to use. And what you need to do as a first step, you need to first get the provisioning for that. And in order to do that, you just need to fill up a simple form, and within a day or two, you'll get provisioned for that. And like other functionalities in Launch, it has got its own extension. What you need to do is you just need to get that extension in your library, and once that's done, then you need to just follow a simple set of rules. For that, you can follow my blog, which will be coming up soon. You just need to follow a certain sort of steps, and you just need to play around with some a deep link. You need to put the session ID of the Griffon, and once that web service is attached with your app, that anything that is getting out of your app is getting recorded in a Project Griffon. And Project Griffon is basically a web-based service. So it's a cloud-based tool. It's not a software. It's not like Charles that you need to install. Everything is online, like your Launch or your any other Adobe solution. And then you can see everything which is getting sent out of your app, your all context data, your rules which are getting triggered, the context data which is getting attached from the launch, everything at just one place. And it don't just give you the analytics APIs, but it also help you debug your target, your campaign, all the solutions that you're putting in your mobile app. So yeah, it's pretty powerful, and it's just one-stop shop to all the debugging solutions.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, Project Griffon sounds like quite a transformational change when it comes to debugging.
Yes, it is.
Definitely slammed my head against the Charles debugger quite a few times when debugging mobile apps. So that sounds amazing.
Yes, it's a lot easier than the Charles and other packet sniffers which are available, because in Charles you face a lot of issues. You need to get those certificates and other configurations done, and it's still, even if you follow all the steps, there's no guarantee that Charles will work fine with your system.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for walking us through that. We did receive a few questions here on both via the chat and via the Q&A. I'm going to bring them up in the order in which we got them. And so the first one, which I knew it was coming, I knew this question was coming. How do changes on Apple for use of advertising tracking ID impact tracking with the new SDK? So how is the change that Apple's doing impacting us? So who wants to take that one? Ray?
Yeah, I think I know. So with analytics, at least from the analytics side, is Adobe generates their own ID. I don't think they've used the advertising ID, although someone jump in if I'm wrong. It's just another reason to stay up to date with your SDKs. It's all handled behind the scenes, at least for analytics. Yeah, so there shouldn't be any major impact that I'm aware of.
All right. The other question is, would there be any additional efforts required within the hybrid apps to ensure the user is the same between, the app browser and the app, right? So
yeah.
We touched a little bit on that. Raj, you want to?
Yeah, so again, it depends on first, I would say it depends on the framework that you're using. So if you're using a legacy framework like Android or iOS, right, and you're not using the modern frameworks like Cordova or Flutter, okay. So it depends on the framework first, but yeah, I would say still the concept remains same. You need to just ensure that your user stitches whenever your user is switching from an app to web or web to app. And for the legacy ones, we have been using separate property for mobile content and separate for web content. And in order to stitch the continuity of a user, we have been relying on a function of visitor ID service, which called append user ID. So whenever your visitor is switching from app to web, you need to just make sure that that particular function is getting invoked, and you ask your developers to pass on the ECID, and then your web content will be able to read that ECID, and then your user's visit will continue. And when it comes to from app to web, you just need to make sure you're passing those ECID and in the deep link, which invokes your app. So yeah, that's how it used to be. But with the modern frameworks, as far as I know, you need not to worry about all these this visitor ID append thing, because your modern frameworks rely, modern frameworks are capable of creating app as well as web content. So I think with modern frameworks, it's just the mobile property which will be able to handle your visitor continuity.
Okay. Okay. So it depends on the mobile app framework.
Correct. Yeah.
But if you're not on a modern one, you still need to do the append to URL.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Awesome. Any color to add to that, Ray, or we're good?
No, yeah, you covered that great.
Next question. We often have developers that forget to send some of our default context data on the lifecycle events. If we had AEP SDKs installed, would I be able to attach the context data to lifecycle events?
So it depends on the data, but yeah, it's possible. So you can use like what Raj was talking about with the attached data. The only thing is you need to have it available. It needs to be available to as like a data element or something, or a static value that you can type in. So if it's something super dynamic that your developers need to provide, then no. But if it's say you're sending say version of the app or something static that you can type in, you can certainly send attached to that.
Nice.
And just to add on what Ray said, there are so many out-of-box data elements available which provides you dynamic values. For example, app ID or ECID, and there are so many others. So you can also leverage on those and attach and then send data.
Yeah.
Really cool. And then we have one, what is the app debugger that you guys were talking about? Someone missed that earlier.
Yeah, so we were talking about the Project Griffon. Yeah, so it's a all brand new solution from Adobe, and it's a cloud-based solution. So in order to leverage on that, you need to just do some configurations in your app. Basically, you need to add the extension of it, and then some deep linking and session ID configurations you need to do. And I mean, it's a pretty simple step-by-step process that you need to follow. And once that's done, your web service will be able to pick all those events which is happening inside your app, and you will be able to see it in your cloud-based application, which is called Project Griffon.
You're going to be writing a blog about that soon, right? So
yeah.
Anonymous
That's coming up.
Be on the lookout for that one. I think it'll be beneficial. Awesome. Well, I think we covered what we wanted to and even more. Thank you all for all your questions. We'll reach out to you guys who did ask questions for your Best Friends Forever t-shirt. But in the meantime, thank you all for making this a really cool webinar. And, we hope to see you in the next webinars, that we'll be hosting. So thank you all very much.